Hi, good morning, everyone. We are back with day 2 of World FinTech Festival India 2021. So once again, we have some amazing sessions lined up for you today. And to start the day, let's take a quick look at our first session of the day, which is a panel discussion on catering to consumer needs with innovative financing solutions. Now, innovating financing is the embodiment of two significant trends in international development: a greater emphasis on result-oriented initiatives and a desire to foster collaborations between the public and private sectors. Now, find out how is FinTech catering to the consumer needs with all these innovating financial solutions in this Power Pack panel. And moderating this panel today is Mr. Akshay Mehrotra, member of FACE and co-founder and chief executive officer of Early Salary. Akshay will be joined by Ms. Pallavi Srivastava, co-founder of Progcap, Mr. Ritesh Chatterjee, chief distribution officer and head of Bharat Money Stores, Mr. Rahul Raj, who is the founder and chief executive officer with FloBiz, and Mr. Sashank Rishyasringa, co-founder, Capital Flow. Over to you, Akshay. The session is all yours.
Thank you, Amit. I think innovation is very important in the industry. And I think one of the most important parts we're seeing the acceleration of innovation and acceptance of FinTech financing, which took place during the COVID crisis. Today, we are coming out of COVID, and what we're seeing almost 2.5 times delta which happened pre-COVID to now across every category, from consumer lending to BNPL to cards. We're actually seeing a hyper acceleration taking place where consumers are going out and saying they want to use credit in a better manner. But we're also seeing newer business opportunities are getting created where fintechs now seem to help businesses grow better. And there's a fine line diminishing between banking and consumer goods. And that's, I think, showcasing a large amount of acceptance taking place of new innovations. I think what we want to do is take this panel and talk about what are the new frontiers of investments where companies are taking to reach out to more consumers. Second, what trends the key panelists talk about in their areas and their opportunities and what we find interesting. What we also see is there's a huge opportunity for the market to expand, and where are the new spaces to invest in. What we want is, we like the panelists to talk a bit about what they're doing in their businesses and also look at what is their first key area of where innovation will take place. Maybe before we jump into panelists, I'll give a quick introduction to myself. My name is Akshay Mehrotra. I co-founded Early Salary 6 years back. Today, we're one of the largest consumer lending apps. But more importantly, today, we realize that it's important for the industry to become stronger. And as an important contributor to industry, we, with other industry members, have set up the FinTech Association, and it's first of its kind body coming in where the industry gets better represented. We're able to represent both the consumer and the regulator perspective to build a commonality and clear focus for growing this business better. Jumping in, let's go to Pallavi as our first speaker. Pallavi, can you give a quick introduction to yourself?
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. My name is Pallavi. I'm the co-founder of Progcap. What we do at Progcap is we provide credit solutions to last mile retailers. And the way we do this is by partnering with the large corporates of whose products these retailers are selling, right? So effectively supply chain financing for sub-dealers of large corporates. And we've been doing this for close to 3.5 years. And we're seeing that there is a huge demand, both from the corporate side who are looking to finance their value chains, as well as from the retailers who have so far been able to cater this demand through informal credit solutions via credit from distributors and the brands. So that is what we are looking to formalize and digitize, and that's what we've been doing. We've done overall close to 3,500 crores of financing, and looking at scaling it to a large, service a large market across various segments. So yeah, so that's, thank you.
Pallavi, I believe you already built a 500 crore AUM, so amazing growth and great numbers at your end. Very nice. Jumping into Rahul, would you like to give an introduction?
Hey, hi. Hello to everyone who is watching this. Glad to be here and be a part of this panel. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of FloBiz, where we are building a neo bank for small businesses in India. Our flagship product is My Bill, which in a nutshell is a simple to use GST billing and accounting software And the penetration of software and digitization in the SMB space stands at about 20%. So there is a large white space where we can look forward to more and more small businesses coming online and streamlining their operations with the help of easy to use digital products and tools. And what we are effectively trying to do is to be able to formalize the day-to-day operations of these small businesses, which puts them in a much better shape to be able to access a lot of these financing services and products that otherwise typically are not available to them, thereby solving for the access to capital issues that plagues the small business ecosystem.
Thank you, Rahul. Ritesh, love an introduction from your end. I think you are one of the most innovative things in using physicality and yet building digitization and technology.
Yeah, thanks, Akshay. Basically, we are part of IndusInd Bank. We are part of a microfinance company which has been there for 20 years, but which has diversified into setting up service points. Because the idea was to solve a key problem for microfinance. If you are aware, that microfinance done in the villages for women, groups of women, weekly repayment model, and it is all physical. So the idea was to provide a solution for them to have cashless collections. And with that, we established around 91,000 such outlets. So Kirana stores who get enabled POS application, biometric device, and they are a full-fledged service center. They can open accounts, they are a BC outlet. In all this, we find that around in a quarter, in last quarter, we had 27 lakh footfalls in these 90,000 stores, people who come for various kinds of transactions. So there are various opportunities we saw. While the original intent was to solve a particular problem, but it gave rise to other opportunities. One was for the retailers themselves, whom we have enrolled as merchants. They needed solutions essentially on lending. So small ticket size loan whenever they need. Second is their own current account requirements. So we as a bank, we are a part of a bank, so we are able to offer current accounts, which is a premium thing for the retailer segment because generally most of them operate out of saving accounts. Third is about then we had this opportunity of trying to lend to people who are walking in for transactions. So this was a fully digitized process end to end. There's no paperwork. So it helped us try out various things, and currently, like Akshay said, so our focus is to find out, this was done a few years back and we're continuing to do it. But the idea is that there are evolving needs and COVID has shown us certain, part of the perspective where we need to be there for these people when they need it. Plus, we found that during COVID, these service points were a great help to all the people because banks were not entertaining, ATMs were empty, and these stores were the only ones who were surviving. So all of us who are in the retailer lending space know that the collection efficiencies of stores was the first to ever pick up in the whole country. So they were the first to go back to as much as normalcy as possible, and the individual lending still taking time to come back to normalcy. So that's why, but the focus here is that since we are mainly tier 4, tier 2, tier 6, there is an assisted element to everything. So where the local populace in the villages expect you to assist them with something. So assisted model in which the retailer helps clients open accounts through his tab, as well as offer them other products like fixed deposits and all, which are conventionally available to us on our own mobile banking space. So what is true for urban, semi-urban, or people, even the merchants who can use their own mobile banking. So I would classify the people into non-mobile banking users and mobile banking. The non-mobile banking users are the ones who need the assistance. And that's a large population, 115 million minimum set of people who are self-employed and who visit these kind of stores across the country.
Ritesh will come to learn more.
Yeah.
Jumping to Sashank, I think he doesn't need an introduction, but to the larger audience, Sashank, could you talk about how you've transitioned from primarily being an SME lender to now a BNPL strong foothold player?
Sure, Akshay, and thanks for having me on this. So yeah, I'm Sashank. I'm one of the co-founders of Capital Float. We are today one of the largest credit platforms focused on serving the needs of millennials across the country, across both salaried as well as self-employed segments. We operate one of the country's largest BNPL platforms, where we are integrated into most of the leading merchants across the country, across segments like e-commerce, travel, D2C brands, healthcare, etc. And on the other hand, we also offer our app Walnut, which is today growing into a one-stop shop finance companion for this customer segment, where customers can access personal finance services such as savings, budgeting, insurance, etc., but also small ticket credit and loans, both for salaried as well as self-employed use cases. So I think, Akshay, to your original question, I think for a few years we were a diversified platform doing both SME and consumer. I think where we saw a surge in growth over the last 2 years was actually in the small ticket loan segment. And today, even today, of our 3 million credit customers, about 40% are actually self-employed. So I think we have made a big bet on small ticket credit, both contextual in the form of BNPL as well as larger kind of small ticket personal loans through our app.
So let's jump into the core area of what's the innovation taking place. And I thought I'd start off innovation by showcasing a device like I'm wearing a ring which allows me to make payments, etc. Right? But what's more important, it's allowing financing payments to happen. You can walk into any postal and without talking to the merchant saying I want a 12-month EMI on buying let's say a phone or a washing machine, you can just waive the product and it gets converted automatically. So lots of innovation taking place today, and we really it really changes the way we look at solving consumer problems and how finance gets completely invisible. Pallavi, do you want to talk a little bit about how you look at the market, and specifically you spoke to me about embedded finance. How do you see the future coming in with that?
Sure, Akshay. So I think so, by virtue of what we do, we provide credit to retailers, in a way that really is embedded into the supply chain, right? So if you look at the transaction between a brand and a distributor and a retailer, and if I can draw a parallel with how a consumer lending would behave in that, right? So a customer is going to a shop to maybe buy a car or a mobile or a TV, right? So they are buying the product and they are not really buying a car loan, right? Or a mobile phone loan. So I think the experience is more important now than the product itself, so effectively, if we are able to link that within the transaction, and I think Uber has done it beautifully, right? You're able to, sit in the car and, make your journey happen and get out of it without really worrying about the transaction, which happens beforehand. So it's somewhere embedded and you don't even realize that the financial transaction has happened. So we are trying to do some bit of that where, it's become more of an experience for people than really a financial product that you are going out and selling. And that's what the customers are wanting, right? In the absence of Progcap or in the absence of consumer financing being available, people are going and making the transaction happen. But I think the idea is really not that they are going to buy the loan, they're going to buy the product. And therefore, how we can really give them the experience which allows them to get the credit, but also not make it a very painful process for them. So convenience and experience are the two things that I think innovation is driving. We saw a huge surge in demand during this festival season. Smartphones grew by 15 to 20%. Consumer durables grew by another 25%. So, and what we've done so far is, during the Diwali season, and I think September, October is a time when the brands are stocking at the, primary and secondary sale is happening, where the products are going to distributor and retailer points, right? Which is where we play a small role currently. And I think there is a lot of demand still waiting out there for the next 2 months. We hear that post-marriage season, it will continue, right? So I think there's a huge opportunity if you can really structure products and make it convenient for customers. Bajaj has shown the way, and there are others who are trying to do BNPL now. There is a huge scope for innovation. Since we don't do consumer financing, we are more specifically focused on retailer. I think what I can really look at is that these retailers are 90% of them are sole proprietors. So effectively, consumers who've been buying products, not having access to finance earlier, 40% of our customers are new to credit. They don't even have a CIBIL score or a credit card So naturally there is a huge latent demand out there that we are also trying to service. And erstwhile, I think the challenges, we know that it wasn't easy for customers, even SMEs, to get financing, with fintechs coming in with alternative way of scoring the data, right? Getting multiple data points to really figure out how this customer will actually be able to behave in a formal credit is something that is, in my view, is a part of innovation. But apart from data-based, alternative data-based underwriting, I think it is the experience where a lot of fintechs and all of us are focusing on how we can make it hassle-free, convenient, and a great experience for customers to avail credit and make it a part of the transaction, then really making credit as the core offering.
Thank you, Pallavi. I think I'll talk about Diwali, and I think Diwali was an amazing time for, I think, many of us. In fact, we introduced our digital card, and to my surprise, we did 75,000 challenger credit cards issued in the market, and almost 100,000 transactions done within the Diwali window. So I think the opportunities are really large, and we're seeing great traction. So I want to jump into Sashank. BNPL seems to be the biggest flavor of innovation today. So could you talk about how you're seeing the change happening, and what can we expect more and ready to change the way Bajaj did it, and how fintechs are changing the way it happens today?
Akshay, I think before I dive into the mechanics of it, I think, as Pallavi said, there's a lot of noise around BNPL today, right? And I think there's a lot of attendant confusion around what is BNPL. And I think the way we think about it is BNPL is actually the tip of the spear to be able to serve customers who are underserved today, right? So people who don't have a credit card, have never taken a personal loan, would often be completely new to credit or thin file. And these customers are now starting to come online and transact in volumes that have never been seen before. And obviously COVID has played a large role in this. And so the way we see BNPL is actually as a way to start these consumers on their credit journey with bite-sized amounts. That's contextual, that's tied to a specific end use, and therefore allows them to, in some ways, prove out their credit worthiness and start to climb the credit ladder over time and access larger and larger products for needs that could range from an everyday grocery purchase to a TV or a fridge to eventually a wedding or a child's education and things like that, right? So that is the journey that we think BNPL is very powerful in enabling in India. I think unfortunately there is a lot of activity around not unfortunately is the wrong word, but I think the reality is there is a lot of BNPL activity today around enabling people who already have a credit card, right, who are already prime, to basically activate them at various points of sale and allow them to shop. And I think the way we have defined BNPL is actually its acquisition at the point of checkout. So we are trying to replicate that Bajaj guy at the store through an SDK at the point of checkout to our partners, and provide a extremely seamless instant experience to customers who are actually new to credit and have to be underwritten for the first time in real time. And I think that is a very hard problem to solve, but it's a very exciting problem to be at, because the returns to actually finding these customers and starting them on a credit journey are huge over time, since these are the customers that we believe will drive credit demand and also retail consumption over the next few years.
Absolutely, Sashank. And I think we are seeing that across the board, across BNPL players, that NTC and, let's say, thin files consumer have never done a financial transaction on a card are the largest use case coming in. In fact, for many of the partners that we today work with, almost 48 to 50% of the customers have never swiped a credit card. So that's a huge opportunity which comes in to introduce BNPL. So let's go across the table to Rahul. Rahul, I know we spoke a bit about many of the new innovations taking place, but you have pivoted from today the most hot category, while 3 years back a lot of ambiguity was there of jumping from Bitcoins to all the way to bill discounting financing. So could you talk about what you think is the next trend coming in while you talk about your journey also?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you mentioned this, because it gives me the opportunity to throw some quick light on where we began our entrepreneurial journey. We are the same team that set up India's first digital assets exchange called CoinEx back in 2017. In fact, it became the first open order book multi-currency exchange and grew to become the largest also of the time. For some cryptocurrencies, we actually were amongst the top 5, globally fiat to crypto exchanges. We pivoted in 2019, and the idea was to take a look at all of these massive developments that were happening in the India fintech scene, and a lot of that. When we did our research for about 6 months, we identified that a large bunch of the pain points actually exist for small businesses. Access to capital being one of the largest. We're talking about close to $500 billion of credit gap that exists here. But one of those pain points, we felt was actually that it had a deeper sentiment and a deeper issue to solve, which was the degree of formalization and the kind of data that people can have access to when it comes to these small businesses. That is where the idea spun off to be able to create a lightweight product that directly the business owners could use, because typically we are talking about these tier 2, tier 3 kind of small business owners who don't come from strong formal education and deep accounting and that kind of a background. So to be able to provide a lightweight product that will help them digitize their day-to-day operations, but gives us the ability to be able to peep into the actual financial health of these businesses. As of date, I can count, more than 55 to 60% of our audience is non-retail who are using My Bill Book for their day-to-day operations. We stand at about 1.2 million monthly active companies using the product. So that way, we have got a good visibility across the manufacturers, distributors, and wholesalers. And having that visibility into specific industries allows us to really look at the kind of financing products that are going to be relevant for different type of businesses at different time snaps. So, in fact, when we're talking about BNPL also, I think some of that application can come into B2B as well, because, this recurring B2B transactions where procurement is key, and, to be able to optimize for cash flows requires a line of credit, or let's just say a flexibility to be able to get access to credit lines that allows for easier and seamless financing of inventory purchases. And the way we are thinking about this is to be able to contextualize and personalize this to the degree where the product is able to not just preempt and identify that there are certain types of high frequency and high velocity inventory SKUs that are now going to run out of stock. And here are a bunch of suppliers who are going to be facilitating this purchase for you at competitive pricing. But while we are throwing that alert to be able to allow for the business owner to take effective decision, it can also be clubbed with a purchase finance or a BNPL kind of product that then allows them to, without any hassle or worry and with utmost convenience, continue to operate their business directly through that interface.
Thank you, Rahul. I think I agree. And I think what's more interesting taking place in the market is that there's a combination of BNPL, or let's say fintechs, coming together to partner various areas. You don't do everything yourselves. What we're seeing today is I'm specialized in one product. Why don't I help you getting that product into your product portfolio, and you can bring in yours. And I think that's the interesting next area also taking place, where suddenly you see a fintech offering 10 products. He only services 5, and 5 others are getting, other fintechs are participating on the platform. So I want to jump into Ritesh. Ritesh, I've been a fan of how micro distribution takes place, and I think your company has really been in the forefront there. And I'd love to know more about how the sachet capability got created by you. And I remember you mentioned to me once that you did almost 200 crores of lending and financing to end consumers using it. So could you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, basically, we have been trying to find out various solutions, because everything is based on what the kirana store or the small retailer needs. Typical, like, all of us who are doing financing supply chain, and there are 2 parts of the aspect. One is the dealer or the stockist, and there is this guy who's a kirana store. But like I said, tier 5, tier 6 in the villages, this is even smaller than that. So there's a pattern of where people need 5,000 to 15,000 every 10 days, 15 days. And the whole idea is that the term lending product, which we typically have, does not suit their needs. What suits their need is essentially a smaller size, because sometimes they may need 5,000, sometimes they may need 15,000. And based on, it's like more of an overdraft, but not exactly an overdraft. So That is one part of it, which the retailer needs is small, whenever on demand, small kind of requirements which are based on their current account balances and behaviors, which you have a limit given to them and they can draw down on that anytime they want. The second is for the customers who are walking, that typically they're being self-employed. Sometimes they'll have a need of 2,000 to 5,000. So these are broken down into smaller ticket sizes. The ticket sizes, the conventional ticket sizes, for them don't matter because the rest of the money they don't want to keep in place. They don't want to give extra interest on the extra money. They don't need. They want only what they need. So typically, this is what is the need we are seeing. So while the merchant need we have kind of fulfilled, we are working on various things in which the end customer who's in the rural area, or you can call them the urban. There is some word called the urban poor. I heard it somewhere, but they're not actually poor, but generally their needs are similar in terms of the behavior pattern, where you may be your driver, your domestic help. They have a particular pattern in which their financing needs also are similar to the ones in the rural area. So typically these people don't have a digital footprint, they don't use apps. And so in that, once their thing is established, the only communication with them is that, look, you got a limit, you can get this much loan. If you want, you please visit this store and give your consent on a biometric. So that is the way we are trying to see if we can reach out people who have these needs in a very sachet kind of products. And the offtake is we don't believe there's any limit on that, but only the operational viability in terms of what it takes to service them in this is what we are evaluating. But for the merchant, all that is clear. Small retailers, for the end customers, is what we are working on right now.
As we, I think, have only 5 minutes more for the conference left, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we cover a few areas which are very interesting. I'm going to combine what Ritesh just spoke about, where, let's say, grey collar, urban working population, which is almost like 27% of working population, under penetrated, absolutely no credit and financing available. And what we noticed was when we work with the employer or the, let's say, gig economy provider like Quest or Swiggy, etc., we are actually able to cater to that consumer in a very interesting manner, and huge acceptance. If I look at just the month of October, almost 38,000 customers in that segment alone from one employer came forward asking for money. So that becomes a very interesting area, and the financing to grey collar, which was untouched by banking or any other lending instrument, has come in as a new wave, and we are seeing lots of new fintechs getting funded in this area also. So I think that's one new innovation. So let's talk about from across the board. Maybe Sashank, what do you think is the next trend, and where could be the next investments happening?
So I think deepening down the credit pyramid, as you mentioned, is obviously going to be a major trend, right? And I think that's got it's on two axes. One is obviously going down the income axis, and the second is geographic. And I think what we're now seeing, I think, with eKYC having stabilized and I think adoption having gone through the roof in COVID is, I mean, literally, like, people are lending all over the country with zero presence, right? We've at this point got customers in over 14,000 pin codes. I'm sure many of the panelists here would have had the same experience. So I think geographic expansion is happening. I think deepening down the pyramid, I would say, is still a work in progress, right? Because I think the reality is of fintech is we all rely on digital data, and whether we like it or not, that footprint still has some ways to go once you move into the grey collar and kirana segment, right? And people like Ritesh have far more expertise and ability to actually judge credit risk in that segment. So I think for all the desire to move down the pyramid, I still think that the share of wallet of digital transactions among that segment is still low, and it will take time to pick up, but certainly it's an area of growth. I think this is something that was mentioned by multiple panelists in the last hour, is really more products per customer, right? And I know this is, for example, a metric that Bajaj Finance has done really well on. is that once you acquire a customer, actually figure out how to cater to multiple needs. And I think it's very natural that many fintechs started out as monoline and really kind of created a beachhead in one product. But I think what we're all seeing is that once you kind of start to serve the customer and get an insight into their behaviors, there's a very natural relationship that can be leveraged to do more, whether it's cards, personal loans, savings, insurance, etc., etc. So I think that rebundling of financial services relationships is going to be a major theme of the next few years. Now that you have several players who have built a customer base on the strength of one product that they've been really good at.
Thank you, Ritesh. Pallavi, what do you feel is the next wave? And maybe you can take a bit more about rebundling, and that's another huge concept in fintech. Where do you see the next level of financing taking place at?
So, I think there is innovation happening across the spectrum, right? We keep hearing about, we are present at the retailer shop, but the moment we talk about the end customer buying the product, there is a clear increase in the conversion rate or the ticket size the moment they have financing available, right? So there is definitely a lot of innovation required. We know the numbers in terms of how the consumer lending market is going to grow. And we're hearing, how this is a very, very exciting space to be in. At the same time, I feel that, like Sashank said, it's the entire gamut of financial services and not just lending. I think one of the things that I feel that fintech still have a long way to go is where we are providing credit. So if you give money, people will take it. But the trust factor, which has to come, because in the moment you talk about saving, the moment you talk about other products, there is a certain degree of trust that customers need, right? So I think that's where a lot of work has to be done. In our business, we feel that it's part tech, but also a lot of relationships, right? So with the brands, with our partners, with the banking partners, how we work with them, how we try to keep the portfolio quality. So there's a lot of work that needed to be done, not only in terms of providing convenience and access to credit, but also how you monitor the portfolio, how you really keep the portfolio healthy, how you recover, and better ways of collection and recovery. And I think those are the areas where a lot more innovation is required. We're just talking about the sales part now, but the controls and the governance, and I think that's where the next big innovation, in my view, should come from.
Sure. Thank you, Pallavi. Rahul, where do you think the next level things will happen?
So, there are a bunch of things that I believe are going to be on the horizon for us. I think, there is going to be a clear focus, not just on the SMB segment in which we operate, but a couple of things that we are seeing also is the focus on younger, generation or, teenagers and stuff like that, where whether that's a Slice or a FamPay or a bunch of these other companies who are targeting these folks who are early in their journey. In fact, we have come across some young entrepreneurs who are looking at targeting their own segment and trying to create more financial literacy for people who take their first steps to, their journey of accessing financial products. The other thing that I think, obviously contingent on how regulations play out, is going to be an interesting domain for crypto as well, because there are going to be some really interesting developments there. We are already seeing a global wave of NFTs and, traditional replication of traditional financial products into the crypto domain. And that way, I think we have come across a bunch of startups who are trying to solve for that as well and trying to deepen that presence in the Indian consumer. So I think those two trends are also pretty visible apart from all of the activity that we see in the small business segment.
Got it. And Ritesh?
Yeah.
Would you like to give in your key points? What do you think the next innovation is going to be?
Yeah, so basically, if I as a user, because if you see what is being really in the public domain, so like I said, the users, the millennials, basically the millennials are having a great time and everybody's targeting them. So the innovation really mainly seems to count for, be it, either stocks or crypto or, people are opening millennial accounts. So I think I would focus on the innovation for the non-millennials and the rural folk, because there's a huge population out there who doesn't watch TV, who doesn't watch IPL, doesn't watch the ads. no cred download now, and so on and so forth. But yeah, though, like I said, but the numbers are there, the maximum, So it's not 50,000, 5 lakh, 10 lakh, it's like in crores. So that is where these guys need access. And I think the people who, same products which are being used here, I think people need to go a bit deeper as they apply. And that is the highway you set up, where we feel if we push these same products which you're doing, this BNPL concept, which you and I can do it now here sitting on our phone, is something if we reach it to the to deeper rural and the people who are urban poor, I think that's where the innovative way of lending to them and making it bite-sized or something which they need as per their needs. So while it sounds like a general statement, but the actual products are already there. I mean, everybody, each one of you is doing it. But I think we need to make that effort to reach it out to this set of people, because they also have a right to access all the innovation which is going on.
Great. So I think as we hand over back to Amit, I want to sum up by adding a few points. I think the first part we take from Pallavi, the need to build trust and relationship across the board, consumers, partners, etc., is very important. What we're seeing is a need for an SRO coming in, and I think many of the fintechs are coming together to almost rally behind saying, can we help set up the first SRO for the industry? I think the second part is deepening the consumer segments. We saw across the last 1 hour people talking about newer segments, newer areas to invest in. Ritesh spoke about how do we go to the next mile customer, how do we go rural. Rahul spoke about specifically talking about the new fintechs coming in, catering to, let's say, students or early jobbers. How do we have segmented customer base coming in so that we can broaden the entire customer base? And that becomes really interesting. I think the last point, while we see lots of new things happening in embedded finance, BNPL, instant loans, instant financing, buying insurance on EMI, buying products on EMI, even, let's say, electric bike financing. But the more important part is how do we embed so the consumer sees this as enablement rather than him seeing as financing. I think that's the new way of approaching the problem. And I think the biggest concept coming in is, as fintechs will grow, how do we combine them? How do we build the rebundling concept and really become, let's say, challenger banks and grow in that manner? So I think if you combine these four, there are going to be a lot more financing options coming in the market. I'd like to thank all our panelists today for joining in, and really enjoyed the short session. Amit, back to you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Akshay, and many thanks to all the panelists who have joined us today despite their busy schedules. It is time for us to move on to our next session of the day. And do not forget to refresh your web browsers to join us for the next session, which is a trialogue on online payments and managing fraud. We'll be back in a moment.